we have not had a chance to have you on the show since the season ended. And in season, we had AB on yesterday, and I know in season you guys are process-oriented guys. Next day, next practice, next game. You've had some time now to think back on the 2023 season. How do you put it into perspective? How do you appreciate it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, now is the time for what we're doing as a coaching staff is really pulling everything apart and looking at it all. And certainly when you don't achieve the ultimate goals of what you're trying to achieve, you carry that disappointment with you. And by the same token, you look back and you look at some of the performances by our players in some adverse conditions. I just thought there were so many times where guys stepped up. I thought the coaches got guys ready to play on short notice, and there were really just you kind of can go game by game of guys making plays that were just hard to coach. And those are the things that I appreciate as I watch the tape and look back at things that we were able to accomplish. Doesn't mean that we're not going to try to get better, because we are, but I can't discount the effort that you saw from the guys this past season.
When you and AB came in, you and even anytime we talk to Paul, it's the Browns way. Like, this is what you're building, that culture, all of that. In a way, was everything you dealt with the best example of what you've built kind of coming through on the field?
Yeah, and maybe, but I also know you have to do it every year. It's a year-to-year proposition that you have to live out those things that you say you are. Certainly, resilience is a big piece of. It's really part of what we talk about. It's part of our identity as being a resilient bunch. And this year of years was definitely a time to show that. There were moments. I think back to the Pittsburgh game at home with, I think we lost Deshaun the week before in Baltimore, and then the team learns that he's out for the season, which was a shock to everybody, and then turn around and I'm proud of Dorian getting back out there and going and helping win a football game. Obviously that was a battle because it's Pittsburgh, Cleveland, but there were moments like that game where guys responded. They showed that they were resilient, because as we all know, when things are easy, it is easy. When things are hard, it can be hard. But I thought we had a locker room that really made sure that they kept the focus where it needed to be, and that focus was, let's go find a way to win a game. It's
so interesting you bring up the Pittsburgh game, because from your guys' vantage point, where your head went with it, you talk to fans, and which is what we do, and it was like the Pittsburgh game was like, we're going to be okay. That was like, okay. Because there was a lot. You're right. I mean, that's a hell of a week. Mm-hmm. The Deshaun injury. Okay, done for the year. Here we go. Now what happens? And then you got the rival coming in. That was a moment there, man, for the city, for the fans, for everybody. It's interesting that it felt that way for you guys too, even though they're separate in a way, connected.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of moments like that in the season. That's the one that comes to mind when you talk about being resilient. But you look really across the season. I've said this so many times. You cannot predict a season. You can't predict anything in this NFL. That's why everybody tunes in. That's why we're all fans of this game, because year to year you just don't know what's coming your way, and this year was another great example of that.
You've been around professional sports much of your life. You want to talk about unpredictable. If I take you back to Greenbrier and say Kareem Hunt, Joe Flacco combined for about 20 touchdowns for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, wouldn't have seen that coming. You would have won some money from me.
Yeah, certainly. I think that's probably would have been a safe bet. There was I wanted to ask you about Joe a little bit, because it's so remarkable what he did in that time, and the professionalism, all of it that he carried, and the way that he played. When we go back to those practices in L.A., as you were seeing him operate, I mean, he's on a couch. It's kind of like a movie script what happened this year. And you're like, oh, he got it. When did you know he still had it that way?
His workout. That was the thing. We brought Joe in. And you didn't know until you saw Joe go through the workout, but his workout was really impressive. And what was it? I mean, simply movement skills, dropping back and throwing to receivers, and putting his arm talent on display. So I knew what he was capable of, but even at that point, we brought Joe on. Joe was coming onto our practice squad. It's not like Joe came right onto the active roster. So It wasn't like, okay, we got to get this guy ready to play in a week, and soon enough we did. But really it was just, can we add a guy that has played, has some experience, and does he have anything left? And the answer to me watching that workout was yes, he does.
Yeah, he certainly did, and proved that over the course of the end of the season. You guys announced earlier this week that you'd be heading back to the Greenbrier. I noticed this during the player availabilities as the season went along, and I'm sure you guys took note as well. Any time that we talked about the adversity you guys went through, they would reference that time down there. What did that time mean for you? And obviously it meant enough that where you want to run it back. But what part of the team building that you see down there that you said, we got to run that back?
Yeah, again, it's not like you go down there and you can just replicate year to year, but I just think there's value in putting your football team together. We're all sequestered. We're all embedded in one place. We're all under the same roof with some weird wallpaper. So I just think it's valuable just to have your guys around each other because, as you know, in the new day and age of the NFL, you're limited to the amount of time you can spend on a training camp date. So that time ends whatever the time is, and guys are then going home and going to be with their families, which is great. As you're trying to build a team, it is valuable, at least for whatever it is, 10 days, to be around each other. And when the clock ends and we're done working, hey, let's go get a meal together, let's go hang out, whatever it might be, you can do that way easier when you're in a place like we're in the Greenbrier, whereas at home, guys are typically kind of going in their own direction.
So that will be the jumping off point for the season next season as well, AB, with that yesterday, that was going to be part of it. You mentioned that now you're going through everything from last year, a lot of changes, obviously, and let's talk about your staff a little bit with Ken. What did you see in Ken, and what do you hope that he provides for you? And you're always so collaborative. You know, you like the sharing and all of that stuff. What did you learn from Ken in the process that led you to believe that would be a fit?
Well, like you said, Bo, it was a process, and we talked to a bunch of different guys, but ultimately felt Ken's experience as a quarterback, as a coordinator, all the places that he's been, all the teams that he's worked for, both from a standpoint of the offensive scheme with the quarterbacks that he's worked with, just felt like he was the right fit for us. I think Ken is really good for me in that we see the game in a lot of ways very similar, but we also push each other, and he has aspects of game that he's been exposed to. I have different aspects, so it's a really seamless, to me, collaboration of bringing great ideas together. And not just Ken, Deuce Staley, Tommy Reese, Andy Dickerson, Roy Estvan, guys that we've added to our group that this is really let's put all the ideas in the middle of the table. And the coaches that are returning, Chad O'Shea's a big part of that.
Yeah.
Thinking about as we put this thing together, we're not just going to do everything the same way just because that's how we've always done it. That's not what you ever want to do. What you want to do is year to year, how can we get better? And I think we have a bunch of different perspectives now, obviously with Ken sitting at that head of that table, to put this thing back together with all of that in mind.
I know you're very fond of a lot of the guys who were here previously, but for you in terms of just getting the synapses firing again, hearing different voices, have you noticed that already?
Oh, without a doubt. And again, as you go through this profession and you go somewhere and it's the first year, a lot of those conversations that you have in year one, you don't really have in year 2, 3, 4. So this has been a way for us to achieve that and talk about different ways that we teach things, different ways that we run things. And that can be so nuanced. It can be so specific as to footwork. It can be so specific as to a landmark maybe for a running back on a running play or the depth of a route. Like all of those things are the things that we're talking about now, that how do we want to do this moving forward? If it's, hey, this is the way we do it, this is what we believe in, is everybody on board? Cool. All right, let's move on to the next thing. Hey, I have a different way of thinking about this. Let's explore that. Let's watch tape on that. Is that how we want to do this moving forward? Great, let's do it. Let's change what we're doing in this area. Let's maintain what we're doing in this area. Those are all the conversations that we're having right now.
The loss of Bill, unique. I mean, obviously that's the one instance where he was gonna. Do you think, by the way, your dad could work for you?
No, not smart enough.
My dad would not take any of my guidance on anything. It would not go well. But how do you – he's the best offensive line coach maybe in the history of the sport. How do you make sure that what he built as the culture of the offensive line remains going forward? And yet that's – because it's got to be authentic to Jace too.
No doubt. And I think Andy Dickerson is somebody that I feel really strongly about. Andy actually worked with Bill, under Bill in New York. He's got a variety of different experiences. Andy's coming in to be Andy Dickerson. You don't come in and try to be Bill Callahan. That's just not fair to Andy or to any coach. There's no such thing as replacing that type of coach. So we feel really strongly about the room, about the things that we've done, the different pieces that we've added. But this will be something that we work through with Andy. but don't want to discount what I think of Bill as a person, as a coach. I love the man. He's a great coach. I'm excited for him and Brian to be able to work together they're truly a unique situation. I'm sure there's examples of that maybe elsewhere, but this one was unique and just felt like it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, certainly so. I know a lot of I heard you in the availability over there. You and Ken are heading out to check on Deshaun. Obviously, that was a big part of our season and his rehabilitation and getting back. As you've had conversations with him through this offseason, post-surgery rehab, how's he doing?
He's doing great. I've talked to Deshaun, tried to talk to him every day, every other day via text, and he's doing great. His rehab is going well. He's exactly where he's supposed to be. He's, as you can imagine, he wants to go faster and faster and faster. But I think it's important for Ken, for myself, to get out there, especially Ken and Deshaun, and this is such a relationship business. You know each other via phone calls, but just to get to know each other and break bread for a night, I just think is important.
Yeah, certainly so, and that'll be such a big part of it. I know that I'm not going to put you on the spot on a timetable, but he is progressing towards. It was always mini camp, would be spinning it.
He's right where he's supposed to be. I don't know exactly where that's going to mean for mini camp, for training camp, all those things. I don't know.
What did it mean to you to have, and I know we see him in the building, like Nick Chubb. I mean, I just think what he means to the fans and, like, him breaking a guitar, like all of those things with a Batman mask, like to go through what he went through, but then also still be that emotional heartbeat.
Yeah, Nick's a special person, as we all know. He's working very hard right this minute. I don't know this for sure, but he's probably in Berea right now. He's probably in the weight room. Seems to live in there. And then you mentioned, there were moments in this season without him was really hard, but he'd pop his head in every once in a while and then literally pop his head into the stadium and put a mask on and smash a guitar, which I didn't see coming. But Nick's a great person, excited for him as he gets through this rehab, as he pushes through. Just never going to discount Nick Chubb.
No, not at all. I think sometimes he has a cape. I know you're not one for the individual stuff, but what did it mean for you to see Miles win Defensive Player of the Year? That's something he has chased for a long time. We had a lot of individual comeback Player of the Year for Joe. All of those things. Were you watching that show? Did you get to?
Yep, I was watching the show. My kids had it on. Very excited for Miles. So obviously deserving. That was the no-brainer of no-brainers for us. Unbelievable player. He probably should have won it. Probably shouldn't be his first.
Yeah.
Won't be his last. For Joe, and I think the whole NFL recognized how unique that situation was fun. And then for Jim, Jim winning Assistant Coach of the Year, I think is awesome. And I think all of those things are individual accolades, which are great for this sport. But this is the greatest team sport there is. So all of those individual accolades really reflect on the team. And that's what I'm most proud of, is because it says something about our teammates.
Were your kids watching when you won?
Yes, we had it on. That was, speaking of unique, that was different. It's funny. I'm sitting there and with the kids, and actually I just put my daughter to bed, and I got my phone out, and my phone starts buzzing, and I guess there were some media members, I'm not going to say who, that were in attendance at that. So I'm watching it. I'm probably 15 seconds behind them. So I'm sitting there, and my phone starts buzzing, and I pick it up, and it says, "Congratulations, Stephen." And I'm like, what does that mean? So I put it away, and then what happens. I'm like, okay, now that makes sense. So that was
that's pretty great.
Yeah, that was crazy. But
were the kids like, Dad?
Well, I've told the story. I have a cousin, Steve, who I'm very close with, who my kids are very close with. So it wasn't the fact that they said the wrong name that was a big deal. It was the fact that they said Steve. So we immediately picked up the phone and called Uncle Steve, as my kids call him. And he was pretty excited. He's had a very good month. He's had some fun with this.
I think if I'm Uncle Steve, that might be like my answering machine or my ringtone. Might be right. That might be good.
He's expecting the red carpet when he gets back out here to Cleveland to go play some golf.
That's very, very good. You ever get a little flex with the kids? Maybe they're not listening to you. Two-time Coach of the Year. Maybe you ought to listen to what I'm saying here.
No, they're not listening.
No respect.
That does not move the needle.
What's next for you? What's the next couple of weeks like for you? You guys got free agency.
Yeah.
And that's where you are.
Yeah, March is busy. We'll again, we're kind of full speed ahead with the coaches in our meetings, which have been going really well. Then at the end of March, it's the league meetings where we'll head down to Orlando with everybody, and as you know, just spend some time down there with different people and make sure we're kind of all on the same page. That's where you find out about some rule changes and all that type of stuff. But in between, it's free agency, and I'm as interested as everybody to see how it all plays out. There's always uncertainty in these things, but I can promise you Andrew has a plan and then a backup plan and then a backup plan to that backup plan. So he's well prepared, and we'll see how it all shakes out.
Contingencies built upon contingencies.
That's right.
Great seeing you, Coach.
Good seeing you,
Thanks.
bro.